So I'm going to start with one of my favourite colours, and I'm going to mix up a foresty green. If you've followed along with my work, you've probably seen me use this colour before, but what I usually do is take a little bit of phthalo green and I mix in some raw umber, and then sometimes I'll add a little bit of black if I wanted to make it a little bit darker. So at this point I can decide if I want to add in a little bit of black to make it darker, and if I wanted to make it a little bit more khaki, I could add something in that's going to make it a little bit more khaki. So I think I'll do that. So this is raw sienna. So I'm using something that's got a bit more of a yellow base to it. I'll add a bit of that in. So this is where I want you to experiment with mixing your colours. Okay, so that is a mixture at the moment of phthalo green, raw umber, and raw sienna. So now what you can do is test it out. So let's bring a little bit over to your test sheet. And this is just a test sheet of colours. So just pop a bit of that down. You might want to loosen a bit of it up with some water so that you can see how it might look in a less concentrated form. So it's still quite bright. There's still quite a bit of that phthalo coming through. We water it down. Okay, so write that down so you know what you've mixed. So over here I'm just going to write that down. So it's phthalo green plus raw umber plus raw sienna. Right? Now, if you wanted to, you could see what happens when we add a little bit of black to it. You only need a tiny bit of black because black very quickly darkens the colour. So you can add that onto the page. Have a look at what that looks like. You can see it's not quite as vibrant, and that's pretty much what I'm going for. So I'm happy with that. So my mix is going to be a little bit of carbon black, okay, to get our foresty green. Another colour that I'd really like is some sort of nice browny colours. So I love burnt sienna. I'm just going to put a little bit of it on the page straight so you can see what that looks like. It's quite an orangey colour. So that's burnt sienna. And I'm using a fluid paint for this one. And then I'm going to mix a bit of white in with the burnt sienna and lighten it up. And that's the burnt sienna plus white. Okay. Another colour that I really like, and again, if you've watched my classes, you'll have seen me use this a bit. This is Australian Salmon Gum by Matisse. It's quite a strong colour, so I like to mix it a little bit. I'm actually going to mix a bit of it in with the colour that we already mixed. So that is basically this plus some Australian salmon gum. And if you want to, you can, experiment with making a lighter version of a colour just to see what that's like. So if you just add a bit of white, you can basically just see what that's going to be like in a lighter version. What else would I like to try out? I'm going to mix a colour using yellow and purple because I want to create a kind of mustardy brown colour. So let's see how this goes. Start with your lightest colour always. So we're going to start with the yellow. So we'll get some this yellow out. Right. And then we're going to add just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of this dioxazine purple. This is a really, really strong pigment, super strong. So you only want a tiny bit. It's more of a more green than what I'm looking for, but it's actually an interesting colour. I have a feeling there might have been a little bit of green that snuck into this. Maybe that was in the paint pot, but anyway. Let's put it down. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it, but I'm going to put it down just as a little experiment because it's an interesting colour. Sort of a mustardy green. So we'll dilute it down a little bit again to see how. You can see there, yeah, in its less concentrated form. It's lovely. So that was a mid yellow plus the purple. And I'm going to see what happens if I add a little bit of the burnt sienna into it. And I'm forever clogging up the lids on these because I forget to turn them to, twist them into the off position and they get all jammed up. So let's take a little bit of this, mix it in, see what kind of colour we get. Right, so I really like that. That's this one plus burnt sienna. So how are we going here? We've kind of got some sort of woody brown. We've got some forest green. We've got some sunset peach colours. I think that's a really good starting place for the colour palette that I want to work with. I may add in a little bit more rusty red details or greys and things like that, other colours that are in there using mark making, but I just want to get sort of a base of colours that I want to work with. So these will be my main acrylic colours that I mix up. There's also one colour that I pretty much always use, and that is unbleached titanium. And what I usually do is I'll mix together these two colours to get a creamy off-white colour that I use in almost all of my paintings. And that has become a signature colour. And when it comes to finding your style, having colours that are colours that people associate you with is a really good way for people to recognise your work. So this creamy colour and also these peachy colours, and increasingly this dark green, are colours that I use a lot in my work. So you want to try and find those colours that people think of when they think of you and start using those if you're not already using them. Really try and put them in your work and thread them through your pieces.